Cave Story released a month after I was born back in 2004. I had over 16 years to play it and friends constantly trying to shove it down my throat, and I always just shrugged it off. Until this week, I finally decided to bite the bullet and play Cave Story Plus to say I officially beat it. I'll get to why that's in quotes later.
Welcome, Web of Wires. Indie games are my bread and butter, my peanut butter and jam, you get the point. It's my comfort food, and it's nearly impossible not to find enjoyment in it. And surprisingly, I still haven't even launched Cave Story after playing multiple indie games inspired by it. In this video, I want to go over some of the key features throughout my playthrough of Cave Story Plus, entirely from an unbiased perspective.
Cave Story Plus is an action-adventure Metroidvania-inspired game. It's very linear after the tutorial, with worlds being pretty straightforward on where you're supposed to go, and extremely memorable right from the start. Along with that, you can also get permanent upgrades like new guns or heart canisters, as well as save points and health packs scattered across the map. Although it might be annoying to restart from the beginning, it's not like you're not having fun on your way back. Aside from that, it's entirely up to you on where you combine your moves together. Quote has a few friends as well. I'll try to stay as spoiler-free as possible for anybody who was like me last week. The story can be explained easily by saying, Doctor fed Mimi gut medicine to take island. But what the story boils down to is learning more characters, finding who can help you, and getting as many people as you can off the island safely. There are 3 endings to the game: the bad, the good, and the best. I won't spoil them, but I got the first and second one. From what I've heard, the third one is a lot more difficult to get to, but is easily the best. If you end up playing the game and you want to get a better ending, just know you can replay the game on the same save file, which is really nice to have. There's that and the characters, man. You grow such a strong attachment to them really quickly because of the way they talk and their sprite designs. There's something oddly nostalgic for me playing this game and reading the dialogue. It's really enjoyable, and those sprites are always filled with personality, giving each character more life and meaning to the story. To me, the sprite work aged really well. It's still reminiscent of that gritty, hazy look from that game's era, but tries to shine away from it. What I mean by this is that at the time, the game sparked with loads of color and attention to detail, but today, it's pretty down the middle. Some areas look really pretty and definitely have their theme, especially character designs, but other times it just feels uninspired. Especially the Sand Zone and the absolute dumpster fire Cave Story 3D came out to be. But the characters, the bosses, and especially the core boss fight, there's just so much happening, and so much professional sprite work done that every sprite done in the game just looks perfectly and matches each other. All the enemies are also built around the level design, with things like this skull thing in the desert or this dumb bat that does nothing but make your life worse. There's not the biggest variety of enemies, I want to say around 30 or 40 not including the bosses and reskins, but it's all because of how each world is designed. You're supposed to revisit some areas, talk to new people, discover secrets. Whatever mission you're on, it's going to be fun. There are platforming bits and combat bits, but the one I absolutely loved the most was how linear this game was. It's not super linear in the beginning, you do need to read the dialogue to continue, but it just made the game so much easier. After you're done with the tutorial world, you get a gun called the Polar Star, and oh boy, let me tell you how much fun they are. Because this game is, well, old, there wasn't a whole lot of balancing. This means you can damage glitch yourself and just spam attack inside of some bosses, or just use the pistol as a laser gun, or infinitely use a machine gun while flying. I can't tell if this is entirely on purpose, but the fact it's in makes the game look so much more fun. Now, I want to say that I was playing on easy mode. That was my mistake. But nonetheless, I did have a really enjoyable time with the guns. And the variety it offers, you got a pistol, machine gun, throwing knives, fireballs, rockets, and I'm assuming even more. I know there's a couple secret guns as well, but I'm no Cave Story expert, so don't ask me how to get those. I think where it shines the most is how many enemies there are and how the leveling system works. There are enemies just spammed onto the map, which isn't a bad thing as the weapons are fun enough to use. In easy mode, I could just walk through the enemies and be okay. But even though I could walk through them, my gun still leveled down and I took damage. This means I was forced to attack them with caution instead of just damage glitching and running through the mess. It's such a weird and unique balancing mechanic that not only puts high stakes on normal and hard mode, but for casual players using easy mode. You know I had to talk about it. The music in this game, man, it's actually so good. This entire game was developed by only one man. He goes by the name Pixel on the internet. He created the music, sprites code, world story, literally everything. And to be honest, the music is just so good for being made without any help. It's a lot like how Toby Fox wrote his music, except Cave Story strives to stay inside of its 16-bit limits. But in Cave Story Plus is where things start getting good. You got the entire thing remastered with that original 16-bit soundtrack serving as a bass, then this organ synth beat dropping in as a primary, and an 8-bit sub beat. It's such a cool soundtrack with so much happening. I hope this all makes sense. Actually, you know what? Just give it a listen. You know what else is good? The boss fights in this game. I know I skipped some, and I really want to go back and beat them. But the boss fights are just so much fun. These cute little dragons, they spin around you and shoot stuff as you try and hit them. Barlog, a great introduction where you get to know him as a character a little more. Rabid Tokoro, such an emotional and sad fight. Monster X, a scary rolling machine with weird hitboxes and fun stuff to dodge. This game seriously has some memorable bosses I really want to beat on a harder difficulty. The sprite work, in my opinion, is just absolutely the best in these fights. So much happening, so much to think about, so much to see. It really is a great experience that very few games do extremely well. But if you want a challenge, even though the game recommends easy mode, I would go with normal. I rarely ever died whilst on easy mode. The only boss fight I died in where I wasn't joking around with a friend was the final boss and Monster X. While I wrap everything up, I want to go over some minor positives and negatives I couldn't find anywhere else. The game's sense of discovery. I never felt lost, yet I never knew where I was. I continued to find new areas and create new ideas as I searched the game. The game, for only $15, packs a big enough punch to instantly make your purchase worth it. I feel like I haven't talked enough about the story. I make it seem like nothing, which nowadays is sort of average for an indie, but being able to really take a look at it and realizing this is what inspired so many more indie devs to make games is what kept me engaged. Even at that, it still differentiated itself from other indies based entirely on a setting and character situation. And time for the not so fun bits of the script. Now, most of the negatives I have are due to old age. There aren't any autosave points, which sucks sometimes. With how smoothly this game paces itself, it has a tendency to get stuck with little things like unlocking a heart canister or taking a nap. The camera works better than it should, but not ideal for a game like this, specifically in this area of the map. The jump sometimes feels a little unpredictable or not really precise. This, again, it's due to old age, but it still is here. I think the description of the difficulty should change, absolutely. I went into easy mode because I'm a first-time Cave Story player, like it suggested. Big mistake. And the biggest flaw. I don't know how they didn't see it, but the first town you're in. It was the only time I felt lost or clueless. It took me 2 hours to get out of the first town to the point where I just watched a walkthrough. I think the dev really should have pushed a lot more into making your first 15 minutes the best 15 minutes, because that's what hooks the player. I found out my one friend has the game on WiiWare and didn't play it much. Now, I understand why he didn't play much of the game. Okay, listen. I don't want to leave this on a bad note. Cave Story Plus is the game that helped reignite the flame in indie games. We wouldn't have some of my favorites without it. But the fact that people are still talking about it 16 years later, and the game is still getting more and more definitive versions, puts it in a good spot. I can't imagine how some of these quests would feel in the original. And with the impact this game will forever have on all of us, I think this is a good time to wrap up this indie gem. Huzzah!
Cave Story Plus is a game I've had on my list of stuff to play for a very long time. And do I regret not getting the best ending? Absolutely. But if I'm leaving with anything, it's a fantastic soundtrack, replayable game, and memories I will never forget throughout my indie game journey. And I think being able to play and see indie games evolve from Cave Story to now, it's a special experience I hope to someday come back to eventually.